At the beginning of the work of Roots, at the beginning of my involvement, at the beginning of my meeting of the other Palestinians, every day was a challenge, a psychological challenge, an existential challenge. Every day was a struggle. Every day was as if new information and new experiences are attacking me or impinging upon me, and I have to think and struggle and deal with it, and the inner turmoil was great. And as the time goes on, obviously it goes without saying that myself and others involved in the work, we get more used to it. We get used to meeting the other. We've already heard their opinions, their worldview, and therefore I would say that in a certain sense it was more exciting at the beginning, right? Challenging is difficult, but it's also good. It's energizing, it's vitality. Today, to meet a Palestinian for me is no big deal. And it's good that it's no big deal, but it's also therefore less vital, less challenging. Then it was growth every day, it was change every day, it was transformation every day. Today, it's much less of that, and it's more of management. It's more of raising money. It's more of trying to dredge up and re-experience the difficult, challenging, exciting experiences of the past in order to pass them on to another generation of activists, a new generation of activists, and obviously to donors and to people around the world. I wouldn't say it's become inauthentic, although there's a danger that it could become that in the future. 2 weeks ago, there was a high school group that visited Roots, visited the Dignity Center, and I was speaking to them together with my Palestinian partner. They had hired an armed guard to protect them, and he didn't enter into the meeting room. He stayed outside, as many of those type of people do. And I went outside at a certain point just to say hello and talk to him. And he said to me in a rather disparaging fashion, he says, "What's this nonsense you're teaching these kids about peace and listening and reconciliation?" He said, "It's all nonsense. It's not meaningful. It's not going to help. We have to be strong. We have to be strong. We have to keep the Palestinians under our thumb, because if we don't, they'll rise up and slaughter us." That's what he said. And that type of thing fills me actually with rage. And I didn't know how to answer him. I didn't want to answer him. But later, a few hours later, I was thinking, and I said to myself, that's the voice of Putin speaking. It's the same attitude. It's the same worldview that might makes right, that the weak are bad because they're weak. It's a negative thing to be weak. You just have to control, you have to exercise authority, you use your force and your might to lord it over others, and that's the only way to be. And I said to myself...
Hold that thought for a moment. And I said to myself that certainly at this point, the West has to continue supporting Ukraine. Putin has to be defeated. We have to help the refugees, humanitarian crisis. We have to get involved. Absolutely. But when all that is finished and we've defeated Putin, then we have to defeat the voice of Putin. In other words, the worldview that is behind that violence is not going to be defeated by violence. The acute danger has to be defeated by violence. But then we're still left with challenging and undoing and changing and transforming that substratum, that way of thinking of Putin and of many of us Palestinians and Israelis. We have to change the discourse. We have to create a paradigm that it's not just us against them. It's not that we have to overcome the other side and defeat them. We have to recognize them. We have to... I've read a lot of books about the why. And there's answers in genetics, and there's answers in the evolutionary biology. I don't know. It's not my field. Why, right? My field is not figuring out why it's like that. My field is trying to change it. So I only know of my own experience and the experience of the people I work with. And I see and I hear and I experience again and again that it's human contact. It's not about books, and it's not about lectures, it's not about rationality, even though it seems that we can make a good rational case why people shouldn't kill each other, right? We're all human beings. So something that we experience again and again is that I can try to talk to Israelis, and Palestinian partners in Roots can try to talk to Palestinians to convince them that there's some truth on the other side, there's some humanity, there's some validity on the other side. And very often those efforts to convince my team don't work. It turns into a political argument that goes nowhere. But when an Israeli meets a Palestinian, or a Palestinian meets an Israeli, and has that human interaction, and you discover the other is not what you thought he or she was, that has very often a much greater effect than any type of effort that I could make vis-a-vis my own people. So it's meeting the other. It's that simple. Of course, it doesn't always work, and it has to be facilitated, it has to be the right atmosphere, etc., etc., etc. But it's not rocket science. The rocket science is to get them to meet. But once they meet, it's not that complicated. Just as an introduction, I haven't studied peace studies in university. I'm not a group facilitator. I don't know any of the theoretical background. I don't have any magical techniques, and neither do my colleagues. And sometimes we ask ourselves, how did we do this? But yes, the basics, I can say that we created this safe space, the Dignity Center, the only joint Israeli-Palestinian community center in the whole West Bank / Judea and Samaria. It's comfortable to Israelis and Palestinians. Why? Well, it feels like home. It's a place that people live. There's nothing threatening there. There's no strong symbols of one side or the other. Perhaps that's important. There's no strong symbols of one side or the other. There's no colors of the other side. There's no flags. There's no political slogans. It's just a place that you come to drink coffee, to meet the other, to talk, to hear a lecture, to be involved in a discussion. And somehow we've managed to create an atmosphere that very often facilitates discussion among people. We have open houses that are not facilitated. We have facilitated discussions with professional facilitators. The magic happens between people. So many times I've talked about and described the segregation, the separation that Israelis and Palestinians live in the West Bank / Judea and Samaria. Just about the only place where that segregation doesn't exist, where the two sides can come together, is our Dignity Center. And when someone walks into it and they meet someone from the other side in this neutral atmosphere, that itself is electrifying, is exciting. Israelis and Palestinians feel just to be in such a place, even before the conversation begins, is a revelation. It's something completely unique. That already opens people up. Within 5 minutes, people say, this is a new experience. So in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, Israelis and Palestinians live in the same geographical area, but completely separate one from the other. Different transportation systems, different health systems. We live in separate towns and villages, speak different languages, different municipalities, live under different legal systems, different schools, education. Everything is separate. There's no interaction of Israelis and Palestinians. And then we created the Dignity Center, the only joint Israeli-Palestinian community center in the whole West Bank / Judea and Samaria, where the two sides can and do come in equality and dignity. So when an Israeli or Palestinian walks out of reality of the segregation and into the center, it's a new world. It's a new experience. Even before you meet the other, just look at them. It's something they've never experienced before, and that itself, I think, opens people up. Just being there opens people up. And then you talk in a fashion you've never ever talked in that fashion to the other side. You may have never ever talked to the other side in any fashion. And every moment for many people, the first, second, third time they're there, every moment is exciting. Every moment is a revelation. Everything is new. Exciting and also frightening. I've had many times the experience of Palestinians telling me, Hanan, the first time I saw you, I thought you were going to kill me. With that beard and that kippah, you're a settler. I thought you were going to kill me. And the second time I saw you and I talked to you, I realized you weren't going to kill me, but it was really, really frightening. I was scared. And the third time, I'm not scared. And I remember 2 or 3 times in that experience, I get up and I hug the guy. And it's so cathartic. Who can imagine a settler be hugging a Palestinian? It really does begin with one-on-one. But each one meets another one, who meets another one, who meets another one. I know today of a chain, I would say, of at least 5 steps that Ali Abu Awad, 15, 20 years ago, met Rabbi Damlin, and he was transformed. And I met Ali Abu Awad 8 years ago, and I was transformed. And Shadi Abu Awad or Noor Awad met me 5 years ago and was transformed. And today I know Israelis who have met Noor Awad have been transformed. I know Palestinians who met the Israeli, who had met Noor, had met me. There's a ripple effect. We have to increase it 1,000-fold, of course. So at this point, the Dignity Center has activities between Israelis and Palestinians every day, both activities for local people and activities for people from around the country who come to experience what we're doing there. So hundreds, thousands of people, Israelis and Palestinians, have been influenced on some level, been transformed on some level to some degree. And today we have our developing center in the Jordan Valley. Then we have our center in the north of the West Bank between Ramallah and Shechem, Nablus, near the city of Ariel. We're developing a center now in the southern Hebron Hills, another one in the Judean desert around Kfar Adumim. And you see it expanding. And the very fact that these things are happening without me being there and without the founders and leaders of Roots being there, there's another generation, and there's another generation, and it's spreading. Again, not enough, not fast enough, not enough people, but something is happening. These are the micro-transformations of another 5 people and 50 people and 500 people. Enough micro-transformations will bring to the macro-transformation. Women wage peace are important friends and allies. Our missions are not totally the same, but they certainly interact, and there are more and more organizations being created that have similar goals and similar activities to those of Roots. Women Wage Peace is one of them, not the only one. We see slowly more and more people who connect to and understand the importance of peace building on the basis of identity and not just on the basis of common humanity, which is one of the major points that Roots brings forth. This is the 13th, 14th, 15th Roots USA speaking tour, I'm not sure. And as in the past, we are speaking in synagogues, in churches, in mosques, in universities, in private homes and offices to spread the word. Spread the word that you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. Of 2 truths in one heart. Of going beyond the hubris of exclusivity to embrace, yes, my identity, but not to nullify, not to erase, not to destroy your identity. That there can be 2 identities in the same little sliver of land, the Holy Land, that are both legitimate. That's a message to the local people, obviously, but it's also a message to Jews, Christians, and Muslims here in the U.S. and around the world that to be a proud Jew or to be a proud Palestinian, it doesn't mean that you have to be anti-Israel. Or if you're the Israeli, you don't have to be anti-Palestine. You don't get any points. You don't strengthen your identity by trampling on the other side's identity. You can be who you are and let them be who they are also. And you can actually embrace that and cherish it. That's a message that many people, perhaps most people, have not heard. And it's a challenging message. It challenged me 8 years ago. It challenges people today. And indeed, it's a message that has universal significance, as we've talked in the past. For me, the hubris of exclusivity is that sense, I would call it a disease actually, a virus, that sense that only my people are legitimate, only my connection to the land is real, only my people exist. I live within the hard shell of my identity. I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it. It gives me meaning. But I don't go beyond that. I'm blind beyond that. I don't think about the human beings who are not in my community, not within my framework. And I just know that they're less than I am. They're not as legitimate as I am. And that hubris of exclusivity has ramifications. When you don't see the other, when you're blind to the other, you don't take them into account, you tend to live your life in a fashion that doesn't take them into account, which means you may end up trampling their dignity and their rights as you're expressing yours. That doesn't mean that your rights are not right, doesn't mean that your relation to the land is not true legitimate, but I don't think you have a right to express your identity at the expense of the other side's identity. In order to live and express your identity in a fashion that doesn't express itself at the expense of the other side, you have to see them, you have to know, you have to see the broader picture of how you live and what it does to the other. I can never be certain. It's hard to read other people's body language. But when I speak, I look at the audience and I find, or at least I think I find, someone who's really, really listening. You see that concentration and that kind of contortion of the face, that something's happening inside, that you're affecting them and they're struggling with it. That gives me pleasure. This is since I know that in order to grow, you have to struggle, and it's not easy. And when I see people struggling and I see their difficulty, I see their pain, I know that this may be a I know this may be a transformative moment for them. And of course, there have been hundreds of cases in which people come up to us after we speak and they say, wow, I never heard something like that. I never thought of something like that. I'm not going to be the same person ever again. That's the purpose of what we're doing. Quantitatively, we have more people. We have more activists. We have a larger body of people who understand the message, have internalized it, and are willing to go out and apply it. And qualitatively, we have more people of a deeper understanding and deeper appreciation of the two truths in one heart. So we have an effect. We have an ever-expanding effect. And as I've said before, the fact that that ever-expanding effect is being applied on the ground, even when I'm not there and other of the founders are not there, that obviously gives us a tremendous sense of gratification that we've passed it on to another generation.